Well, here we are, my friends, at the end of another year, 2022. I mean, if this was 2018, AEW didn't even exist, one day I'm gonna be dead. What? But you know what we do when we do get to the end of a calendar. We have to bring back the finger of power, which is this guy. Give him a kiss and give the good bits an up and the bad bits a down when it comes to a promotions run. And yes, today we are focusing on AEW to see how they've done. So make sure you like the video, share the video and subscribe. Leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. And let's up those downs for 2022 All Elite Wrestling. So we shall start with a down, just because I want people to hear that and go, what? And shout into their YouTube screens. Because I am a bored a-hole, and I just really like the chaos. And it's not the worst thing in the world either, especially because I like to look at the human side of this. But over the last 12 months, Tony Khan has hired a lot of damn people. I mean, there's been new faces turning up in AEW almost every single week. And while this is absolutely fabulous in many ways, because it means people are being employed, in others, well, it's been very difficult to balance. But if you don't want people to have a job, you have a serious problem. And now that I am talking about it, I am going to give it an up. But like I say, every action has a consequence. And because of this, there have been some of my favorite wrestlers we have barely seen in 2022, such as Miro. Now, maybe he has a damn good reason for not being on television, but has anybody told me? No. By this point, I wanted him to be world champion, I ain't joking. You could also say that some of the original Elite members have also suffered here. I mean, Wardlow didn't take off like we were hoping, although trust me, he still will. But once again, this is all about the right mix. You need some of the old, and of course you need some of the new. I am just hoping that Ring of Honor does get a TV deal in 2023, because this would open up the door for more opportunities. But when you do look at it like a big thing, it's gotta get it down. And speaking of Ring of Honor, well, it's been interesting. It also kind of ties into what we were just talking about, because what's the alternative? Ring of Honor just dies? Nobody should want that. If you do, you're an absolute goober. And fair play to Tony Khan for saving it. He didn't have to do it. I thought it was a nice thing to do. Still, in terms of what I do want from AEW, yeah, there can be a little bit too much ROH at times. And to be fair, most of that is saved for Rampage, and that's been great. Even then, it can be so confusing when some random wrestler turns up and all of a sudden you're meant to care about them. Not how brains work. Again, though, I would rather be Mr. Negative Nancy and see people being employed on my television set. But when it comes to being a fan of a certain thing, this one just doesn't work for me. I tune in for All Elite Wrestling, so the more I can get of that, the better. Just getting it down. Right, let's move on to happier times, though, because the Acclaimed totally smashed it. I always liked Anthony Bowens and Max Caster because I thought they had something about them, but who the hell knew that adding Billy Gunn to the team and doing a bunch of scissoring is what was going to put them over the edge. Here we are at the end of the year. That's definitely what happened. It has been a revelation though, and the best part is that Tony Khan picked up on this and ensured they became the tag team champions, because that is all that wrestling is. You listen to the fans, and if they're going crazy, and if they are shouting stuff like, oh my gosh, we love scissoring so much, you don't ignore it, because that always results in failure. And now we get to the end of the year, and the Acclaimed are one of the most popular acts in wrestling. They're also still the tag team champions and selling merchandise like crazy. If we can just keep this plodding along, well, I think it's only going to get better. It is getting it up. As are AEW stories. That's right. Because there is this weird rhetoric out there that AEW doesn't have any narratives, and I will just tell you straight off, that's not true. If you are equating this with one of the party matches that they do, which is just spot, 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 where you're getting your wires crossed, especially all I have to do is say to you is MJF versus CM Punk. I mean, this was like a runaway freight train with so many angles that paid off in a satisfying way. And it wasn't just the matches, it wasn't just the promos, it was everything they had put together. It was like watching a visual novel. It also proved that if Punk never returns to wrestling now, he has proof that he hadn't lost a step. And MJF used all of this to continually climb the ladder. I mean, this was so good at one point in my life, I'm absolutely going to watch it all back. It even served to get Wardlow up and running, and as we've already discussed, we haven't capitalized on that just yet, but we absolutely will. It was just pro wrestling done right, and also felt old school, but a little bit new school too. He's getting it up. Which is when we head to the other side of wrestling too. I mean, the flipping matches. come on. Now, yes, as already said, you don't have to like it. If this kind of style is not for you, you can go and watch something else. But I don't think 1 week has gone by when I haven't watched a Dynamite and kind of laughed like, that thing was 6.25 stars in a Tokyo Dome. And there's no pattern to this either. It's not like it's just one style or one wrestler. I mean, Chris Jericho and Ishii had a fabulous match. Everything between the Death Triangle, the Elite has been brilliant. That Acclaimed versus Swerve in Our Glory match was just an emotional roller coaster. And John Moxley would just turn up and go, oh, I had another good one. Let's also not forget about Bryan Danielson and Dante Martin, who rewrote the idea of gravity in 2022. And I honestly could keep doing this for days. Not going to, because it'll get boring. I think what has happened in many ways when it comes to modern wrestling is that we are offered so many good matches we don't appreciate them in the way that we should, which is why I am taking my finger of power and giving it an up. AEW just smashes it all the time. On that note though, we do have to talk about a weird one, but I do get it. Bring in the American Dragon. I would give him an up all on his own, but we just covered that in terms of Bryan Danielson's in-ring ability. And I think we have now got to the stage where we can say he is one of the best workers ever. If you disagree, I don't think you're looking at the same person. There is an issue here, however, because if you walked in right now and said, Simon, do you think Bryan Danielson has cooled off as a main eventer a little bit? I would stare back at you like, how did you get into my house? But also, you're right. Now, we know a huge reason for this is Bryan Danielson himself, because he's such a team player and he just loves wrestling so much. He even said in a recent interview, if Tony Khan wants to put me on AEW Dark, I will go to Dark. Oh, the best damn time of my life. But much like when All Elite Wrestling was first formed and Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes all tried to do the same thing, eventually you do lose that luster and you do lose that star power that kind of elevates you above everybody else. And as soon as Tony Khan stopped the Elite doing that, all of a sudden they did become their superstars. So when we get to 2023, we should probably be trying to do the same thing with Danielson. So he should only be losing in the rarest of circumstances, and we should wrap him up in cotton wool. And while it was awesome that he went out there and did get defeated by so many young pups, eventually less is more and more is not less. That's why it's got to get it down. Let's just get it out the way too, as we are kind of here. Everything with the Elite and CM Punk, the brawl out from Fallout, well, none of it was good. I don't think it helped anything. Because even before we get into the human side of this, which must be horrible for all involved, it got the wrong kind of headlines, allowed too many people to take shots at the company, and now here we are in December, and we still don't really know what's going on. It also took Omega and the Young Bucks off television, which we never want, and we have no idea if CM Punk is coming back. So it's got to get it down. I know it's interesting from a fan point of view, but when it came to just trying to invest in the wrestling, it is a big fat no. I do want to give a quick up here for the promos in AEW though, because much like the matches, they just have a bunch of guys and girls that can grab a microphone and get you interested within seconds. I mean, if you were looking for old school interviews, All Elite Wrestling is the place to go. I mean, there's CM Punk, there's MJF, there's Eddie Kingston, there's John Moxley, there's Ricky Starks, there's Britt Baker, and there's so many other people I could talk about. And while there's always going to be somebody you can say, well, what about this person? I ain't worried about that. I am saying the peaches and cream, who are really good at doing this, are so good, I'm giving it up. And as we have talked about him a couple of times as well, in 2022, he deserves his own special up. Maxwell Jacob Friedman. You could argue the last 12 months have cemented his place in AEW, especially because he is finishing the year as the world champion, but there's so many other things we can discuss. We've already talked about the CM Punk stuff, but also, he is a terrific pro wrestler. The only reason we don't mention that more is because he deliberately rarely wrestles. But the Moxley stuff rocked, everything with Wheeler Yuta rocked, I enjoyed the Wardlow program, and eventually we're about to do something with Bryan Danielson. I tell you, that's going to be flubbing great. He also never cuts a bad promo, even though some like to pretend that's the case. And think of all the controversy he's provided in 2022 as well. At one point he had a mic and he basically told Tony Khan to flub off. And while there was good and bad to that, once again it created a ruckus. So you can love him, you can hate him, want to see him get smacked in the mouth when he does that shib-eating grin. But really, even without buy rates or pay-per-view numbers or ratings or whatever it may be, he is a generational talent because he's 26 years old, and who else in their mid-20s is this good? 2023 could be a huge year for Friedman as well, especially with the great bidding war of 2024. But when you wrap everything up from what we've just seen, it has got to get it up. Just to make sure we're giving everyone their due too, when it comes to the AEW women's division, I think this is the best year they've ever had. Now I know the criticisms, and while I think some are fair, I think others are just people losing it. But the fact that we got to the end of 2022 and Jamie Hayter is our world champion, well, that's evidence that sums it up. You can see the eventual showdown with Britt Baker coming as well, so we do have stories here. And Jade Cargill is just a superstar in the making. Well, to be honest, she's already there. If Chris Statlander returns and is the one to dethrone her, that's going to be even better still. And Athena has been absolutely killing it after she turned bad guy. I know a lot of this happened on AEW Dark, but still, it's a damn revelation. Tony Storm also never has a bad match, and while injury complications did kind of sully the end of the year, Thunder Rosa was on fire at the start of the damn thing. So you can just see everything coming together here, and long may it continue. I will also stand by the fact that Nyla Rose was involved in some of the most entertaining skits that AEW had all year, when she just stole the TBS title and treated it like, yeah, what you going to do? She will always be one of my favorites. And let's finish with a cheesy one as well, because the magic is still there. That's right, I said it. Because there have been some times throughout 2022 where it did feel like AEW fell off the rails a little bit. I mean, I think that's only fair to say. And yet every time they had a bat in their hand and they had to hit a home run, I think they got it. I mean, take a feud like Jungle Boy versus Luchasaurus. Not only was it very well put together, but it resulted in a bunch of good matches and it made sense. And I tell you this, when it comes to pro wrestling, making sense is not a prerequisite. You also don't get a reaction like Kenny Omega got when he returned to All Out unless you built something well. And there were just so many little nuggets that made you smile. I mean, there was Orange Cassidy versus Shibata. There was that time that Keith Lee bealed Isaiah Cassidy into next week. The Jon Moxley promo he cut when he came back from rehab. All of it just made you get up and go, wrestling! That's a good thing, also very weird. So sure, maybe this has been the most uneven year when it does come to All Elite Wrestling, but I actually think that makes sense. The novelty has worn off, we are not a new company anymore, so now it's time to take the rough with the smooth. When I put that all in a pot, giving it enough. Also, I lied, the Goofy Wrestling. I want to give a shout out to the Goofy Wrestling. Because we have talked about scissoring, there's the Danhausen stuff, Brandon Cutler is a master of this down on dark, Angelo Parker and Matt Menard, also a fantastic at it, Jake Hagar's hat, Chris Jericho will get involved too. Orange Cassidy gets it, Colton and Austin Gunn are always happy to be idiots. If I've said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times, Goofy Wrestling for life, it actually makes me happier than all other elements of sports entertainment, hence why I'm finishing with one last up. Of course, I've deliberately missed loads out here so that you can fill it in the comments, otherwise this video will be 47 minutes long and nobody wants that, so make sure you do it. Also, like the video, share the video and subscribe. Head over to whatculture.com where you can read the article that has loads more in it, because of course your eyes are more forgiving in that way. Please do follow us on social media and come watch more videos here on YouTube. I mean, WWE 2022 Ups and Downs are also live right now, you can get mad at that. My name is Simon for What Culture. Thank you very much for joining me as always. Have a lovely end to your year, and I'll see you in 2023.